Right, so we're at the stage now where we've finished the body and we're now ready to start on the sleeves. What I've done is I've threaded the stitches that were on waste yarn onto my needle. And remember, these are the larger needles, the ones that you use when you're knitting your stockinette. What we need to do now is, if you remember, there were these stitches that we cast on earlier for the armhole. We're going to be picking up stitches from here to create the full circumference of our sleeve. The pattern, for some sizes, the actual cast on that you did here and the number of stitches that you're picking up might differ. Don't be concerned, just make sure that you pick up your stitches evenly across the row. It will turn out absolutely fine. It's just what the pattern requires in order to get the correct arm circumference. So my pattern is telling me to pick up 5 stitches starting at the middle of the row. So I'm just going to count along, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to start here. Just going to grab my yarn. The way you pick up is you enter into the top of the column of stitches. So here's a knit stitch. I've just put my yarn through. Then I'm using my yarn around the needle and pulling the loop through like that. So I'm just going to enter into the stitch here, or the cast on stitch, wrapping my yarn around my needle and pulling the loop through. Again, here is the column of stitches. I'm putting my needle through the fabric and wrapping my yarn around the needle, pulling the loop through. So you can see I've got 3 now that I've picked up. Put my needle into the fabric, wrap my yarn around. That's 4. And then here you can see I'm going to go on and knit this. So what I want to do is, in this area here where there's a bit of a bigger gap, I'm just going to put my needle sort of slap bang in the middle to try and make that connection between the 2 sections as seamless as possible. There we go, so that's 5. So now you just need to knit across the stitches, the ones that were on hold and are now on your needle. And then when you get to the other side, the pattern will tell you to pick up another set of stitches, and that will close the gap between these stitches that you've picked up at the underarm and the other stitches that you will pick up at the underarm, and that will create the full round. So now we've picked up the stitches here at the underarm and we've been working in the round. The pattern tells you to work your decreases at the same time as making sure that the sleeve measures a certain length. It's one of those instructions that can feel a little confusing when you first read it, but really all they're saying is, for example, this size needs to have a sleeve of 20 centimetres. They're saying keep that in mind whilst doing this set of decreases. So it's quite straightforward. Just keep an eye on your length whilst you're working the decreases to ensure that it comes out the correct length. Now there's 2 new decreases that we haven't had in this pattern before. The first one is slip slip knit. The way that you work a slip slip knit is you enter into the first stitch on your needle knitwise and slip it off. Do the same on the second stitch on your needle and slip it off. So you've got 2 slip stitches now on your right needle. What you're going to do now is, using your left hand needle, enter into the front of those 2 stitches like this. So you've got 2 stitches that you've entered into there on your left hand needle. It's almost like, when you knit into the back of the stitch, your right hand needle is actually at the back. Same sort of thing. Anyway, your yarn is attached to the back of this stitch here, so you're just wrapping the yarn around the back needle, pulling the loop through, and that's 2 stitches that you've worked through, so you've decreased 1, and that's a left leaning decrease. Now it tells you to work across the rest of the row, and then towards the end you'll be working a knit 2 together, and I'll show you how to do that as well in a moment. Okay, so I'm at the other side of my sleeve. I've got 4 stitches left, and this is where I'm going to work my second decrease. This one is a right leaning decrease, and the way that you do it is you've got these 2 stitches here. What you're going to do is knit into the 2 stitches as you would if you were just knitting a regular stitch, but you're doing it at the same time, so you can see they're both on the needle. Wrapping your yarn around and knitting it normally as you would, and there we've got 1 stitch decreased, and you can see that it's kind of hidden. You won't be able to notice it very easily. And then work to the end of the row, and that is your decrease row. And so according to the pattern, whatever the pattern suggests, you'll be working that row every now and again until your sleeve is the correct measurement.